He teamed up with the BC NDP to decriminalize fentanyl, crack, and heroin. He lowered jail sentences for mass producers of deadly fentanyl. And 80% of the fentanyl made in Canada is done so using ingredients that are not even regulated, but come right into our country where they're cooked into that poison, now threatening our trade relationship with the U.S. Will he reverse his radical liberal drug agenda to save lives and jobs?
He's not there to do the work of delivering based on science, based on compassion, based on a public health approach on dealing with the toxic drug epidemic. He is instead continuing to try to score cheap political points on the backs of the most vulnerable. That's not serious. That's not responsible.
What is not responsible is allowing 80% of the chemicals used in fentanyl manufacturing to come in unregulated and legally. What is not responsible is decriminalizing crack, heroin, and fentanyl. And then after you see that it leads to a massive increase in deaths, then 2 weeks ago, he, the Bloc, and the NDP all voted in favor of a committee report to decriminalize fentanyl right across the country at a time when Canadians are dying and our border could be closed. Will the Prime Minister confirm that he has reversed himself and now opposes decriminalization of fentanyl?
Hear, hear. Pierre Poilievre. It's an amazing thing, actually. I didn't really pick up on this the first time I listened to this clip, which was provided to me by Jeffrey Sirois, in response to the discussion that's going on right now on the interwebs over the imminent tariff war between Canada and the United States of America. Just want to play it one more time because it's right at the beginning where he acknowledges that there's a risk of it interfering with our border relations with America.
He teamed up with the BC NDP to decriminalize fentanyl, crack, and heroin. He lowered jail sentences for mass producers of deadly fentanyl. And 80% of the fentanyl made in Canada is done so using ingredients that are not even regulated, but come right into our country where they're cooked into that poison, now threatening our trade relationship with the U.S.
Now threatening our trade relation with the U.S. It's so freaking wild to watch this in real time. That's what Pierre Poilievre said in December. And I know this because I've kind of been following these things. Now threatening our trade relations with the U.S. And what does Pierre do today? What position does Pierre take now when he thinks that playing tough with America over tariffs and trade is the popular thing to do in Canada? What does he do today? Well, you know what he's going to do today because I've called Pierre Poilievre a fair weather politician forever. Not even necessarily as an insult. It might make him a better politician because he's fair weather and he will evolve as per public opinion. But back in December, this issue, the fentanyl crisis in Canada, set aside the terrorist stuff, we'll get to that in a second, now risks our border relations with America. Change your path, Justin Trudeau. Oh, what's that? Now it seems to be kind of cool to play strong to big bad Trump. And so what does Pierre Poilievre do now as relates to the tariff war? He puts out a tweet that says we must put Canada first. That is why common sense conservatives condemn President Trump's massive, unjust, and unjustified tariffs on Canada's already weak economy. Well, you know what's really good? If you already have a weak economy, Pierre, and you've already acknowledged that the drug issue and the terrorists crossing into America creates a national security threat for America, you know what's really good? You should probably fight a tariff war with America right now. You should call it massive and stupid and unjust when just last month you acknowledged specifically why it was a concern to America. So Pierre Poilievre, thinking that it's popular in Canada to get involved in basically a land war in Asia, to quote Princess Bride, to get involved in a war that you will not win, and that the only people who will suffer are going to be the citizens that you purport to represent. Now he decides that's the tact his ship is going to realign with. Oh, and by the way, just so you know, it wasn't just fentanyl. Like, there's a number of arguments going on here. There's a tariff war. Trump is now saying slapping a 25% tariff on stuff coming in from the Canada because you guys don't want to secure your border. We've got fentanyl issues. We've got terrorists crossing into America from Canada at 8 times the rate of terrorists crossing into the United States from Mexico. Many of you might not know this, but if you watch the channel, you do. What was this one? I was in response to, I never thought I would say this in my lifetime. The United States of America is an enemy to Canada. That's right. I'm not trying to put anyone on blast. I genuinely want to wake people up. How Justin Trudeau's government was compromised by the CCP. Is, and I think the conservatives are as well, which might explain them playing into this idiotic game of chicken with a freaking Mack truck. If you're going to play chicken, you don't play a chicken with a Mazda Miata versus a Mack truck. That's what Canada is trying to do. They have some ways to strong arm America a little bit, hydroelectricity into the northern states that need excess electricity. But by and large, the Mazda is playing chicken with the Mack truck. Do you remember when Canada was training Chinese soldiers on Canadian soil? Oh, illegals crossing at northern U.S. border continues to skyrocket. Hundreds of terror suspects arrested. Like, somehow people don't seem to realize whether it was pretextual to renegotiate NAFTA, in which case, congrats, you dumbass, you took the bait, and now you're going to renegotiate NAFTA when all you had to do was agree to cut the fentanyl production in Canada and stop terrorists from crossing the border. Whether or not it was pretextual, congrats, you screwed up. But whether it was pretextual or not, many people don't understand that Canada literally has become a national security threat for America. You got a government that has been compromised by the Chinese Communist Party and by radical Indian elements, not to a small degree. You got a country that has decriminalized hard drugs. And you have a president that's coming in and saying, yeah, maybe we are getting taken advantage of under NAFTA. I don't care that I'm the one who negotiated. I don't like the deal anymore. You know what? I'm going to use the terrorists crossing your unsecured border and your fentanyl as a pretext. Fix it, or we impose tariffs. Oh, Canada's a proud country. We don't have to succumb to this crap. We're going to fight fire with fire. It's just that we're a match and you're a blowtorch. And so if it was pretextual, congratulations. You're going to have mandatory forced renegotiation of NAFTA, whether you like it or not. And the bottom line, Canada needs to fix the Canadian government needs to fix its stuff. To not swear until we're 8 minutes in. They need to fix their stuff. And if they don't want to do it on their own, well, they're going to have Big Brother twist their arm back and start hitting themselves. So it's wild to see what's going on right now. I don't think it's going to last long. I just think that the Trudeau government is a little more stubborn and a little more suicidal than the Colombian government. Remember, by the way, you remember when Colombia said, we're not taking back our own criminals? What do you think? We're stupid? We let them go for a reason. Oh, tariffs? Well, we're going to fight tariffs. And everyone's like, we're going to pay more for coffee. You got AOC like, I don't care if there's rapists on the street. I don't want to pay more for coffee, even though I'm already paying more for coffee by going to Starbucks where I pay $5 a cup. Colombia buckled overnight. I'm predicting it now. The Canadian government will buckle. Although they have to make it look like they're not buckling. They're going to have to make it look like we strong-armed a negotiation with Trump and they're going to buckle. But they want to play hard and they think it's popular. And Justin Trudeau needs a crisis in order to distract from his failed government. He needs a crisis in order to distract from the failed state of Canada right now. And people are saying, well, you know, if Trudeau's on the ropes, why is Trump giving him this chance to use Trump as a pretext? This is exposure for the world. Maybe people don't necessarily realize that there are, I think it's 8 times the number of terrorists or people on terror watch lists intercepted at the Canadian border compared to the Mexican border. Whereas you have something like, I don't know, tenfold the illegal immigration crossing from the Mexican side to the American side. So understand what that means. That you've got domestic policy that is resulting in 8-fold terrorist watch list encounters coming from Canada to the U.S. Maybe it's because Justin Trudeau has been handing out foreign student visas to adversarial countries like cotton candy. And these students who come in on these visas and then, I don't know, 5% default, they never show up to classes. You create a national security threat. You refuse to fix it or even entertain the notion of fixing it. And then you get slapped with tariffs. And then what does Chrystia Freeland say? She's never met a Canadian she's not willing to throw under the bus for her globalist agenda. What does she have to say here? Is this it? Oh, here. Let's go here. This is what Chrystia Freeland has to offer.
I would publish a retaliation list. We have huge leverage over the United States because we are their single biggest export market by a long shot.
We have huge leverage over the United States. A retaliation list. Oh my goodness. I thought Trump was the one making an enemies list. Let's make a retaliation list.
We have huge leverage over the United States because we are their single biggest export market by a long shot.
We have huge leverage over the United States. It's not a sign of weakness to understand what it means to negotiate from a position of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. When you understand your position, you don't overplay your hand. We have huge. Hey, see where it goes. What are they going to tariff though? Tesla EVs. Nice music. U.S. alcohol. By the way, they're going to tariff U.S. alcohol. Do you know how much you're paying for alcohol that's Canadian made? I can tell you this because I know it from experience. The amount that they tax on Canadian liquors puts Canadian distilleries out of business. It makes the SAQ rich. That's the Société Alcool de Québec. It makes the government entity wildly profitable and their employees. What else are they going to do? Free land. Yeah, free land. Free land, my ass. They love the environment so much that they're willing to forego the environment in order to penalize Trump. They're going to 100% tariff on Teslas. Where are they going to get their EVs from? Oh yeah, China. Well, it doesn't really make it. Oh, but Trump is pushing Canada closer to China. They're dumbass. They've already been infiltrated by China. Trump is not pushing Canada any closer to the country that already infiltrated the government. He's just exposing it for the world. Oh, but now, by the way, speaking of governments being idiots, and oh yes, let me make sure not to forget to play this time. People, our sponsor of the evening, the wellness company, coming in hot. Are the globalists gearing up for a pandemic scare after failing at the ballot box in November? Just weeks before Trump's inauguration, California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a bird flu state of emergency. We're going to talk about this tonight with the Ostrich Farm, granting himself sweeping powers reminiscent of COVID-19 policies. This comes after a case of H5N1 flu was reported in Louisiana. Critics like Nicholas Hulscher warn that pandemic fears may be weaponized to challenge Trump's agenda, including nomination of RFK Jr. to HHS, Health and Human Services. Is this a health crisis or a power play? Last summer, Peter McCullough warned about the bird flu, linking the virus's rapid spread to gain-of-function research, now a common practice at many labs globally. McCullough urges early prevention just in case, recommending a contagion emergency kit from the wellness company, his medical board-approved solution with 5 critical life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Tamiflu. It's got a nebulizer, hydroxychloroquine. Every household can now have access to these hard-to-get medications in the event of another pandemic. Get yours by filling out the digital intake form today. The kit arrives in 1 to 2 weeks, so don't wait until the deep state hits back. Put your plans into action today. Stay ready for the unexpected. Go to twc.health/Viva. Use promo code Viva. It gets you $32 off, free shipping. And it's unfortunately only available. I say unfortunately, Canadians, it's only available to U.S. residents. TWC Tango Whiskey Charlie.health/Viva. $32 off and free shipping. That is it. Link is in the description, people. We're going to continue the tariff conversation, and we're certainly going to get into the ostrich farm conversation because we had I guess we can start off with a bit of a white pill. Barnes is in the backdrop. You can come in, Barnes, if you're waiting. We had a bit of a white pill. A white pill from Canada following Barnes's white pill with Tyson Foods and the settlement. Robert, you heard the news? I mean, I don't know if social media had anything to do with it, but that ostrich farm story where they were ordering the culling of over 400 healthy ostriches on this British Columbia ostrich farm called Universal Ostriches in Edgewood, British Columbia. Canada Food Inspection Agency comes in and says, we tested a couple of dead ostriches. They tested positive for the avian flu with a PCR test. Order the slaughter of all of them. And there was some social media outcry, some backlash, and a federal court on Friday issued the injunction enjoining the order of this CFIA agency until the order itself could be reviewed, which I think is basically, it's never going to get enforced because the reason the order was issued was, to prevent the spread of the avian flu. These ostriches now are living with antibodies, so I don't think it's ever going to happen. But that's the good news coming out of Canada. Robert, sir, how goes the battle, and why do you look so dapper?
Good. We got a busy Sunday. We got all the confirmation hearings. Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel that dominated a lot of the news cycles and some of the legal issues that were raised connected to each of their confirmation hearings. including vaccine-related issues as it concerned Kennedy, the truth about Ed Snowden, as there were a lot of media lies last week as to Tulsi Gabbard, and then January 6th controversies as it related to Kash Patel. Then we got something that's kind of slipped under the radar because Gabbard wasn't challenging it at this point, but a federal court found that the application of Section 702 under the FISA laws was being applied unconstitutionally by the Obama administration in its prosecution of certain alleged would-be terror supporters. We got Trump versus the administrative state and the bureaucracy. They're suing everywhere, saying that they are the ones entitled to run the executive branch rather than the elected head of the executive branch, President Trump. In the state of Indiana, suing its own cities and counties and sheriffs because there's some that are refusing to enforce the federal immigration laws and are trying to be a sanctuary city within a state that's not a sanctuary state. The FBI frame-up that we talked about way back at the time it happened, further confirmed by judges this week concerning the Michigan case. That's a case I think that's been overlooked in the pardon discussion. Just like the Mackey meme case, they're really, that pardon, in my view, should already be issued. The same is true, in my view, of the federal side of those Whitmer Fednapping cases. The court admitted that the FBI has been busy creating fake militias all across the country. That's now no longer a conspiracy theory. It is a court finding by a judge supportive of the FBI's efforts in that regard, by the way. The city of New Orleans sued, along with some of its vendors, for the terror incident on New Year's Eve because the city was too busy with diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring and worrying about the Super Bowl rather than worrying about the Sugar Bowl. The Second Amendment, another win against these laws prohibiting 18 to 21-year-olds from being able to have access to the tools and means of self-defense. The right to teach at the beach, the case against the city of Newport. AI copyright, subject we've been following. The Copyright Office issued a big report giving its interpretation of when AI can and cannot be copyrighted. We got porn copyright trolls, which is its own unique animal. So that wraps up this week's agenda.
And I know nothing about that last subject. I'm curious to hear where we go with it. Yeah, I guess, Robert, we'll start, everybody. We start on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to end on CommieTube and Twitter, bring it over to Rumble and Viva Barnes, and then we have our after party. So let's do the confirmation stuff, because that will probably take us a good 45 minutes. I got so many freaking questions. I guess we go one by one. We'll cover the confirmation hearings last week. We have to start, obviously, with day two. No, because day two of RFK was last week with day one. Shit, we haven't even had a Sunday show since. Bernie Sanders is done for life. Like, I feel bad, because I think he has destroyed whatever legacy he might have had enduring with people who were too ignorant to what an absolute rapacious hypocrite he is. He came out and was grilling RFK Jr. I forget what about. And RFK comes back with that.
The onesie.
Oh, the onesie. You're selling unvaxxed, and that's okay. Something along those lines. Selling onesies.
Unvaxxed, unafraid, little onesies by Children's Health Defense, which was an organization founded by Robert Kennedy, but which Robert Kennedy has withdrawn from several months ago.
So he's going after RFK. Do you approve of this message? They're selling for $27. That's terrible. And then RFK comes back to Bernie Sanders with the most blistering comeback ever, because I think it destroyed a man. He said, look, all of you are bought out by Big Pharma. Bernie, you were the number one senator to receive Big Pharma donations in 2020. And you go, I knew you were going to go to this place. I received them from individual donations, not from any PACs. And it's like, first of all, no, none from executives, none from CEOs, which is also a lie, because he did. And then he had to return that money when it became known. His argument is that he only received $1 million, the most of any senator, from individual donations from people employed by the pharma industry. His argument is that it's from the workers, because I'm so good for the workers, they want to support me. It was 3 times what he got in 2016. He comes out and makes this known to the world. And then I believe I eviscerated a man in real time on the internet. But then just for fun, went back to 2020 to see where else he got his money from. And then he's like, there was only 1.5 million of $200 million. And I go, oh shit, that's right. Because you got about another 10 million from Amazon, Apple. What was the other one? Google? From the Defense Department, from New York State. He got $10 million from big corporations set aside from Big Pharma. What do you make of Steelman the argument? Okay, he just got donations from individual employees within the sector. That is not political action committee support. I cry bullshit over that. That seems like laundering the support through other means.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And as you note, it's not historic support. So, go back and look at Bernie Sanders recipients from those connected in the insurance industry or the medical industry or the big pharmaceutical industry or the defense industry or the tech industry, and look at it up until prior to 2020. And prior to 2020, he got very little support from the pharmaceutical industry. He was one of the bottom recipients of anybody tied to the pharmaceutical industry. Then in 2020, as you note, he becomes suddenly overnight the number one recipient of pharmaceutical money, along with a lot of other industry money that just flowed in to his presidential campaign of 2020, unlike 2016. 2016's campaign was very dependent on small donors. 2020's campaign was not. Now, it didn't matter. Obama and Biden knifed him anyway. The Democratic Party ran him over anyway, because that's what Bend Over Bernie does in the Bend Over Bernie era. But I agree. There were a whole bunch of people. I would call it the left. I was curious why Trump decided to put all three of the of these people, Kennedy, Gabbard, and Patel, for confirmation hearings, when Kennedy and Gabbard themselves said that they would face fierce opposition because they're legit. And to give people context, I don't believe anyone has been turned down by the Senate, nominated by a president, since like John Tower in 1989. And that's because the guy was such a hopeless drunk. They were afraid he might hit the red button. But that being said, you know how legit Kennedy is by the degree of by who his opposition is and the degree of the intensity of the opposition in D.C. Same with Tulsi Gabbard. Same with Kash Patel. Schiff was about to have a stroke up there just at the possibility Kash Patel would be running the FBI. And that's exactly who we needed as reform agents. But I was curious, knowing the hostility they would face, why go through it? And then I realized, watching all the hearings, Trump was going to expose both who within the Republican Party are sellouts and traitors, and two, the Democratic Party is completely closed off to the independent populist movement that fueled Kennedy's campaign. That this whole independent left populist movement that Bernie Sanders represented and Elizabeth Warren represented more than anyone else in the Senate, because they had become pharmaceutical stooges during the COVID era, Trump knew they're going to expose themselves to the world. That if you're a left populist, independent populist, if you're one of those working class minorities, millennials, and Zoomers who has been trending away from the Democratic Party, who just gave the Democratic Party their most negative rating in the entire polling history of the Democratic Party to a Democratic-leaning pollster at Quinnipiac University, the message was, watch who Bernie Sanders now really is. Watch who Elizabeth Warren now really is. Watch who the Democratic Party now really is. Watch how even lifelong friends of Robert Kennedy will betray him for the Democratic Party in the pharmaceutical industry. That watch how people like Cory Booker and Gillibrand and others like that had said that they were opposed to big food and opposed to big pharma. Watch them bend over backwards for them. And you could see it all over social media. I heard it from friends and family that are on the independent left or the populist independent left, wherever you put it, people who in particular like Bernie Sanders. And they were bitterly disappointed. And many of them were shocked. They didn't know that Bernie had become the biggest pharma whore on the Capitol. But he did in 2020 and in the name of the idolatry of vaccines. That's the other thing that a lot of people didn't fully realize, that the vaccine worship looks like religious worship. That all of a sudden, I take a drug, I just put the word vaccine on it, and magically and miraculously, it's perfect, like it came directly from God. That's how these people were acting. That's why you had memes as Elizabeth Warren as the priest of the vaccine hood. You had Bernie in a onesie that said, the vaxxed and very afraid.
Here, let me play this, Robert. I mean, this is...
His answers are he intends to continue to make money off his anti-vax position. Look, he says he won't go to work for drug companies because the American people have a right to know that the decisions made while he is Secretary of HHS are only for the good of the American people. And yet, he wants to keep a piece of the action on every one of these anti-vax lawsuits. And what that means potentially is, as Secretary of HHS, he can make those lawsuits a whole lot more profitable. In fact, he may have the opportunity to bankrupt the vaccine manufacturers, and then nobody gets vaccine.
That's all we needed from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's extraordinary about this is, one, the confession through projection, pretending that Kennedy's motivated by money, right? Not Elizabeth Warren. Been a corporate whore her whole political career, has been a war whore as well. On top of that, not just being a fake Indian, she's a fake consumer advocate. She's a fake populist. She's never, I mean, this is someone who spent their life helping big banks and big creditors and big credit card companies stiff over ordinary people in bankruptcy. That's who, I mean, always, when people told me, some of my friends, some of my family left that, Warren is this great candidate. I'm like, what world are you living in? What propaganda have you been reading? And then the second component of it is the degree to which she's admitting that the pharmaceutical industry is causing net harm. A pharmaceutical industry doesn't have to worry about Robert Kennedy or worry about being bankrupted if their products are safe and effective. It's only if their products are not safe, if they're not effective. In other words, what they're all admitting is that, I mean, vaccine companies existed for forever prior to the special immunities passed in the mid-1980s, right? I mean, the only drug companies that went bankrupt on a vaccine prior to 1986 was ones who deliberately put out a vaccine that was dangerous and ineffective and not what they said it was. That's it. Nobody else faced such consequences. What it is they realized that any objective measurement in front of an honest, independent jury would, if given that evidence, come to the conclusion that these vaccines are net negative. And that's the reason why they got their political pals to give them immunity. Immunity not only if you're on the kids list, immunity if you can just find an emergency and call it a PrEP Act vaccine, even though it's not even a vaccine. I mean, that was the other irony. Senator Cassidy's like, I'm worried about whether people having doubts about vaccines and that somehow it'd be a bad legacy for Trump to have Kennedy in there. What he doesn't realize is the country is already doubting vaccines because of these lies. Like the Democratic senators, like, science can be contested, and that's why you shouldn't contest science. It's like, okay, that didn't even make sense. But you get it's idolatry. It's hey, what you're talking about is heresy. And even if the heresy is factually true, we have to suppress it lest people believe in other heresies. I mean, that's what they are, I think, to a lot of normies. I see why Trump put Kennedy through this. He put it up so the whole world could see, so that his own party could see, so that the independent voters that put him over the top could see that the Democratic Party has nobody representing them anymore. And that their very icons and allies that they thought were their icons. I mean, just look at what Jimmy Dore is talking about. Look at what the Young Turks. I mean, you're talking about traditional left-oriented commentators. Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mate, all the rest. But it wasn't just there. You could find a lot of normies on social media who are like, I had no idea this was the case. So it's not just Nicole Shanahan, who is constantly red-pilled by the realization that all the people she helped put into power 4, 6, 8 years ago were always traitors to what they claimed to be supporting. Like Warnock. As soon as Warnock got in the Senate, he was for sale. I mean, he got more pharma money quicker than anybody as a new senator. That's why he's against Kennedy. But I think it's a shock to the normie out there. Just like on the Tulsi Gabbard confirmation hearings, it was a shock to discover just how much the so-called anti-surveillance state crowd on the Democratic side is actually completely in the deep state's pocket. I mean, that they're going, again, Kennedy, Democratic royalty. Tulsi Gabbard, longtime Democrat. That's who the Democrats are going after. And what Trump did is he set this up to make, he wants these people in, but I see why he did it, go through the confirmation process, is because he wanted those independent voters who are divorcing from the Democratic Party to realize they got to divorce. There's no getting back together a little while and seeing if it works out. It's time for full separation. And the people who delivered that to them were Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They hand delivered their populist voters over to Trump and away from them, not even realizing how damning and damaging this was. I mean, you have Bernie making that preposterous onesie complaint that all it did is boost, children's health defense, ran out of onesies, so they had to order new ones, and they put up a special discount code, everybody. You can go get one of those unafraid, unvaxxed onesies, and if you want a discount code, just enter discount code Bernie. Is how they came up with. So, I mean, it was more. I mean, Kennedy held up very well. Gabbard held up very well. Kash Patel held up very well. Not a surprise in any of that. Democrats damned themselves with their own key voting group that's going to decide the next elections for the next generation, and they did made potentially fatal damage to themselves by so viciously and bitterly attacking their former allies. That are the most legitimate, authentic populist side of that equation.
So you had Elizabeth Warren trying to get RFK Jr. to undertake not to sue vaccine makers or pharma company. You had Bernie revealing to the world that not only is he a big pharma whore, he's just a big corporation whore at large. That was the RFK hearing. RFK is amazing. Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, what's amazing with the Tulsi Gabbard hearing is that the Democrats, the scoundrels that they are, think that they're making a point by getting Tulsi to say, you're repeating talking points which are factually correct about Assad, the gassing in Syria, but these are things that Russia is saying as well. And therefore, because you're parroting Russian talking points, which happen to be factually correct, are you not part of the problem? She was amazing in that composed, but there are dumb people trying to make people who are smarter than them look stupid, and it's not working. Tulsi Gabbard comes out and basically says, I shed no tears for the fall of Assad, but you are funding and financing and training a replacement that is going to be worse than the old one. It didn't work in Libya. It didn't work in Iraq. And you're trying to do it here thinking it's going to work here. You guys are part of the problem. And I mean, it was beautiful, but the question is this: are the normies even paying attention to watch this? I say that they are on a scale that we've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the other reason I realized Trump did this. Because remember, for those that don't know, that the original talk was throughout the summer and fall, as Kennedy himself talked about with Tucker Carlson, was that he and Gabbard would likely have unappointed roles, that they would have a significant role in the Trump administration, but that due to the institutional hostility in Washington, they would likely not be in Senate confirmed roles. And instead, Trump went through this, and it's evident now why, because with Tulsi Gabbard, you saw who is really behind the surveillance state, who is behind the deep state. The extraordinary thing was their not only their sort of obsessive attacks and nasty attacks and fake attacks on Gabbard, but particularly their made-up claims about Ed Snowden. So for those that don't remember, what Ed Snowden did is Ed Snowden was an independent defense contractor who was a believer in Obama, who realized that the Obama administration was systemically spying on Americans illicitly and then was lying to them and the Congress about it. And the question was, what was he going to do about that? And there's some suggestion, well, just go through the internal whistleblower chain. What happens when when the person you're supposed to report to about blowing the whistle is the person who's doing the illegal activity? That makes no sense to me at all. That is, okay, just go. Barnes, you understand the patriotic thing to do is to go through the chain of command, not when the chain of command is the one doing the illegal activities.
Let me stop you there just for 1 second. I every now and again I get confused between collateral murder, which was Julian Assange releasing classified documents, versus Ed Snowden, which was the surveillance state. What did, even if I want to steel man the argument that Ed Snowden is a traitor,
revealed certain techniques, so that he released certain techniques the world didn't know, and the argument is okay. But fundamentally, what it is it's a deference to the government. It's that you should always defer to the government. You should always defer to the chain of command. And that's how you should never expose the government without the permission of the government. And that's really the only argument that they're making, because there's no credible claim that if he had gone through the chain of command internally, that the whistle ever gets blown. It just doesn't happen. It never happens. That's the
no. He might get invited. I made the joke like he might get invited into the back of a pickup truck in the back of an Arby's where he's gonna Epstein.
He would have been Epstein. Yeah, exactly. So he had no choice but to go public, and it was an incredibly brave and bold thing to do. Now, Gabbard's not in a position where she can say that anymore because of the hostility of the Senate, but it showed people that are on that left populist side, independent populist side, for whom Ed Snowden is not an unpatriotic, is not unpatriotic. He's the ultimate expression of patriotism.
Well, that's what I noticed when I realized that I wasn't exactly confident in my own assessment, because I sort of understood both sides and was teetering in the chat when we were live covering this, and they were asking, is he a hero or a traitor? I don't think I saw anybody in the chat say he was a traitor. I mean, everybody in the chat, and there were thousands of people watching, said he's a hero. I can't understand what he did.
Because of what he disclosed. I worry about the government doing bad things to me more than I worry about foreign governments and individuals doing bad things to me. That's why I always favor the Constitution, even if it means letting a criminal go free, because the criminal is far less a risk and danger to me than the government, if it is not unlimited and unconstrained by the Constitution is. I mean, what Ed Snowden did was, and he went to great lengths to try to limit any collateral damage in any national security aspect. Try to keep it as broad as general, just provide enough detail to substantiate how and the reality that the U.S. American people were being illicitly spied on. But it's amazing that those people up there were so hostile. So, hey, I mean, these are people that they're just revealing the degree to which the Democratic Party is in the pocket of the deep state and the big pharmaceutical industry and the Bill Gates and George Soroses of the world. And even their supposed populist allies are actually in their pocket. That's what this week disclosed between Kennedy, Gabbard, and Patel. And with Patel, you have this extraordinary the interaction between he and Schiff and he and Klobuchar. And what's amazing is that they're still pretending that there's a bunch of independent voters who give a rat's rear end about January 6th. Schiff is still living in that fantasy land. And in fact, this week was the most revealing, as Richard Barris was talking about, People's Pundit Daily, in terms of the Democratic Party's disconnect to its own base. It is completely disconnected. And this week it was busy. The number one impact, no matter whether they get confirmed, don't get confirmed, the number one impact of this week is the damage the Democratic Party did to its own brand amongst the key voters who are going to be deciding elections for the next generation.
I want to pull up the video because I want your professional opinion on this. Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think? The odds are now starting to climb that she gets confirmed. You're still. I'm still on board with all three. I think they all three will get confirmed. It's a question of by how much.
I mean, I know there were some Republicans flirting with it. Trump has made very clear these are his three most important nominees to be confirmed. So that's, I really don't see Cassidy. Cassidy may have his disagreements with Kennedy, may have his disagreements about the trend of the vaccines, et cetera. Though if he logically thought it through, if you're pro-vaccine, the best person to be put in that position is Kennedy. Because if Kennedy comes out and says this vaccine is actually safe and effective, people are going to believe him. They're not going to believe the government. They're not going to believe anybody else you put in. They're not going to believe. So if you're Senator Cassidy and you really want to restore faith and confidence in the medical authorities and in the government and in vaccines, the best way you can do so is to put Robert Kennedy there, because he's sincere and authentic and wanting to make sure they're safe and effective, and people are going to believe they're safe and effective if he says it. So you're only undermining faith and confidence by undermining Kennedy. The same like the senators like, oh, I'm worried about people second guessing science. That's the problem. When you tell people they can't second guess something, then they're not going to believe it at all. I remember, for example,
just in case nobody saw it, I don't know if this is my cut or someone else or the original.
Sometimes science is wrong. We make progress. And when you continue to sow doubt about settled science, sometimes science is wrong. And when you continue to sow doubt about settled science, sometimes science is wrong. It makes it impossible for us to move forward.
It was that was my cut to make her look even stupider than she looked. Well, when you question settled science, but sometimes science gets it wrong. So you're an idiot. Who was that?
Exactly. Senator Hassan from New Hampshire. And so it's their disconnect. They also don't realize this isn't 2018, right? That they could sort of push back against Trump back in 2018, 2017, when he wanted to put Kennedy in charge of a vaccine safety committee. And he got a lot of negative pushback, so he backed off. Now he was like, screw it, I'm going to put Kennedy in charge of the whole Secretary of Health and Human Services, because that's what I should have done the first time. And all these people think, oh, well, we'll just criticize Kennedy for raising any doubts about vaccines. Don't realize after COVID, when the government lied about a drug that wasn't a vaccine, it just wasn't. The COVID vaccine is not a vaccine. It does not prevent transmission or infection.
It's a therapeutic. The report from the subcommittee concluded as much. Kieran Moore out of Ontario said as much. It's a therapeutic at best, except it doesn't make you.
Exactly. It's a therapeutic that is also not safe and not effective. Not effective at the preventing COVID-19 in any meaningful way. Supposedly it reduces its effects. That has not been proven to any substantial degree either. And then it's not safe at all in the way that it was being projected as. Because of that, we did the Four Freedoms poll with Richard Barris. He's been talking about it. 1776 Law Center. Thanks to all those supporting 1776 Law Center, because part of what we did is we did a poll last spring, early summer, and gave it to everybody on the political side, on both sides, by the way, Democratic and Republican side. And what it detailed is how much people are committed to food and freedom and medical freedom politics changed after COVID. People don't have the same reflexive deference and complete confidence and trust in the medical establishment. And Democrats should know that. Otherwise, Biden wouldn't have been busy pardoning Fauci. If in fact there was no skepticism out there. And now more and more people know about the bioweapon labs that they were pretending didn't exist, and the ties to those in COVID-19. So what they don't realize is that they're just on the wrong side of history, and they're on the wrong side of where these voters are. And they're relying and they're giving false information about the so-called vaccines, false information about the Snowden, and false information about January 6th defendants, all in an effort to try to derail Patel, Gabbard, and Kennedy. And all it really did is derail the Democratic Party's ability to reunite with what used to be part of its base.
Robert, during the hearings, it was Adam Schiff, Cory Booker, and I forget the third one, who were seemingly giving Patel legal advice during the hearings that he could disclose the subject or he could disclose the nature and tenor of his testimony before the grand jury in the Trump prosecution case. I got the feeling they were trying to get him to disclose something that they knew he was not legally allowed to disclose, because it's what Adam Schiff was basically doing during the Russiagate hoax by lying, and then knowing that anybody who came out to contradict his lie would be violating the confidentiality provisions of the committee. Were they trying to frame Patel to break the law as relates to what he was not allowed or was allowed to disclose as relates to his testimony?
It really depends. He may have been given specific instructions. So generally speaking, if you're called before a grand jury, nothing you say, nothing you experience, not even the questions you're asked, are in fact confidential. Prosecutors will try to intimidate you into believing that it's secret and confidential. But generally speaking, just the fact that it's before a grand jury does not make it confidential, despite misleading representations by the prosecutors. However, there are circumstances where they seal the records for other reasons. So they may seal the records because of some form of executive branch privilege, some form of presidential confidence that should be there. Maybe because he had access to classified materials. Like what my guess is that they were trying to sucker him to disclose things, not because they were secret before the grand jury or sealed before the grand jury, but because they likely concerned access to materials he saw when he was a member of Nunes' committee that were being kept secret. And my guess is some of his testimony concerned some of those things. And they were trying to sucker, oh, look, the incoming FBI director just disclosed classified information. He can't even tell the difference between that. I think is where they were really trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't dumb enough to take that bait. Just like he wasn't dumb enough to take the bait when Schiff was like, look, you wanted that drama. Look to your right. Look to these poor Capitol police officers, where Schiff's busy just lying like crazy, which he can do, of course, because Congress gave themselves immunity from libel. So they can libel anybody they want. If you ever want to libel somebody, run for Congress, win. And then once you win, you can libel anybody you want, because the courts have decided that Congress gave themselves the complete immunity and liability. I think that's a mistake, but it is where we're at. That's why by the way, they waited until, especially when you have the most protection is when you lie in a committee or you lie on the House floor.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you have maximum privilege, because then you have constitutional speech and debate clause immunity on top of their Westfall Immunity Act that they gave themselves. And consequently, that's why you get the biggest libels when that starts, when they just start making random stuff up or making up whatever they want. And this is how the Democratic Party rules. But what's different is you should use that against your conventional, traditional adversaries, right? Use that against the Wall Street guy for Secretary of Treasury, say. Now, of course, they're not going to do that because they're really neo-corporate Wall Street in the pocket as well. But what they reveal, who you don't use those nasty, dirty tricks against, are Democratic royalty like Robert Kennedy, are longtime former Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard, are people who have deep support within your own party base and within the independent voter groups that you need to win future elections. By the way, several of whom voted Democrat down ballot this last president election. That's how they got split tickets out of Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona and Nevada. And what it is Trump just reminded them and gave them a crash course in why that was a mistake. I mean, these were the most watched confirmation hearings that I can remember for cabinet positions.
No, that was my observation as well. And it wasn't just that they were watched; it's that they were watched by people with large audiences themselves. I mean, it was a veritable force multiplier where never have they seen this much sunlight and scrutiny in real time. Which is why, like, the likes of Bernie and Hassan got absolutely roasted on social media in ways that would have never been the case 10 years ago. And it's not 2016, it's 2024, 2025, and you've got tens of millions of people watching in real time, like you've never had before with these confirmation hearings. You still think all three get through? Bernie Sanders, although you can go to Sports Picks, I don't know if you have any choices on these. Does Bernie yay or nay on all three? He's going to go nay, or do you think he has
right now the betting markets are saying he's going to go nay on all three. It would be he'll definitely go nay on Patel, even though he supposedly cares about civil rights. He'll go nay on Kennedy, even though he supposedly cares about Big Pharma and Big Ag. And he'll probably go nay even on Tulsi Gabbard, because even though Tulsi Gabbard took huge risk for him in 2016. It's just who he is. Maybe he'll break on one of the three. But the Democrats are exposing themselves in live. It would have been smart of some Democrats to cross over. If Fetterman wants to have this independent rep that he was experimenting with over the winter break, vote for these kind of nominees if he wants that. I mean, the Kennedy, for example, I mean, the Amish are paying great attention to Kennedy's nomination more than any other action the administration can take, of which the Amish by themselves can decide elections in the state of Pennsylvania. As Food Safety News reported, they made sure that Trump was always going to win Pennsylvania this past cycle. If they're smart. But I mean, will Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island show what a traitor he is by betraying his a personal best friend from the time for the last 50 years? Is that how much politics matters more to him? And so that's what we're going to find out. Is there anybody with a conscience left in the Democratic Party? And then who are the traitors in the Republican Party? I think there may be a surprise or two. I think people are thinking Susan Collins is going to vote no on all three. I don't think she is. I think assumption is that Murkowski is going to vote no on all three. I don't think she is either. Now, the question is, speaking of torching his legacy, while Bernie was doing it on the left, Mitch McConnell was busy doing it on the right. He's basically John McCaining himself in live time.
I'm looking at the Kalshi markets, and Lisa Murkowski is up big. She's at a 30% chance of voting for Tulsi Gabbard. Bernie's almost 10-1, or he was. No, Fetterman was 10-1 yesterday. Bernie was like 8-1. So fingers crossed. I just made a joke of a tweet that if Bernie doesn't vote for Tulsi Gabbard, he's a racist misogynist. Dems the rules. Dem, bada bing, bada boom. To be continued. Oh yeah, sorry. When is the vote on Tulsi? When is the vote on all three of them?
I assume it's going to be this week. They did a bit of a break. Now, some people had asked if they don't get through, can Trump recess appoint them? The answer is yes. He either has to wait for a certain proper recess to occur, or he could try something that hasn't been done in a while. But most legal scholars agree that there's substantial debate, but there's at least a good number of legal scholars that support the proposition that the president could recess the Senate himself by order. It's just a power that I think has never been exercised before. But Trump might explore it, because the reality is that the more debate centers on people like Kennedy and Trump and Gabbard and Trump and Kash Patel and Trump and FBI reform and illegal spying and Ed Snowden and vaccine safety. You know what that is? It's called win, 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 win for Trump, no matter what happens, right? As long as these are the topics being debated, and these are the images being projected on the people's TV screens, and the names being cited over radio and podcasts, that helps Trump. Democrats are so out of touch. They think Kennedy is unliked. And it's like, can't they read a poll? The most well-liked cabinet nominee of President Trump is Robert Kennedy. He is exceptionally well-liked. The more exposure he got, the more his approval ratings went up. What's extraordinary is, I thought when he joined Trump that would probably take a severe hit on his likability, given some portion of that comes from the Democratic family legacy. It didn't. In fact, he went up with as many people as he went down with. So, I mean, that's how out of touch they are. They don't realize. I mean, one reason why we did the Four Freedoms poll with Richard Barris was I realized a bunch of Republicans didn't realize this back in the summer. I was like, I'm seeing it in live time. And we dug in. 1 in 3 Americans believes they or someone very close to them suffered a debilitating and disabling injury or death from the COVID vaccine, or was discriminated against related to the COVID vaccine. And disproportionately, they're working class minorities, millennials, and Zoomers. That's what was driving Kennedy's movement. The other thing they're strong believers in is food freedom. They're looking to find ways to feed themselves and their kids healthier than they grew up, because they're witnessing the adverse effects of the bad food we've been stuck with, this corporatized, monopolized, industrialized, mechanized food supply over the past half century that government regulators help facilitate. It's the Democrats who don't realize it. They're the ones who are still disconnected, not understanding that how big this voter group is becoming. I mean, consider, for example, Big Pharma had a week to stack the Kennedy room, right? I mean, you're talking about the most powerful lobbying group in all of media. The reason, reason why J.D. Vance pointed out on Joe Rogan, the reason why Big Pharma is advertising in America isn't to get people to buy their products, because they have to list all the bad side effects in those ads. Those ads are about buying the complicity of the media political establishment, so they keep their mouths shut. And they buy them off with lobbying deals. I mean, for example, the last Secretary of Agriculture under Biden just given a sweetheart gig in big corporate agriculture. Right away. As soon as he leaves, right out the door, bam, there's the payoff. There's the after-the-fact bribe. So that's what the American people want. So the Trump is going to find a way to deliver. That's why if you're Senator Cassidy, you vote for Kennedy, because that actually gives you more access and control than otherwise. Otherwise, Trump is going to go forward on this no matter what. Kennedy's going to be in a position of influence no matter what. Gabbard's going to be in a position of influence no matter what. So if you're Congress, don't you want those people to be some people you can subpoena because you have regular supervisory authority over them? Or do you want them to be outside of your supervisory authority with any degree of ease and simplicity? So smart politicians would vote yes, even if they don't agree with Kennedy, don't agree with Gabbard, don't agree with Kash Patel, because it's the only thing that's going to restore confidence in any of these agencies. FDR saved Wall Street. He didn't destroy Wall Street because he didn't blame Wall Street for the collapse of the economy in 1929 to a certain degree. So, I mean, there's a smart way to handle this and a dumb way to handle this. And the only question is, do Democrats or Republicans in the Senate know what's smart or not? And that's what's not always clear. I think in the end, one way or another, all three of these people are going to have a substantial impact on the Trump administration. The only question is whether the Senate is the lead obstacle or the lead ally in that process.
I'm going to read some CommieTube chats before everybody goes on over to Rumble, because we're going to migrate there now. And I got a couple of questions afterwards. Robert, we got your cut to make the senator look more stupid. Can't be done. She is already at her max.
I did love who was the comedian that did the great cut up?
Oh, it was Ty Fisher who did. How do I stop sharing? It was Ty Fisher who did a hilarious voiceover of some of this stuff. It was, I mean, people, you can't steal his stuff and not give him credit. You need to let people know who the creator is. Canada and Mexico teaming up to protect their Chinese drug smuggling and human trafficking operations into the U.S. says everything. I won't read the last part, but I definitely agree with part of that. And I'm going to get to the Rumble rants after this. I'm just trying to, I had to screen grab them.
Yeah, are you going to become a bootlegger and start sneaking that Canadian liquor in over the border?
The irony is, I just saw a tweet that said, in Canada, they're saying buy Canadian liquor instead. The liquor commissions put Canadian manufacturers out of business with their costs and their taxation. So people don't realize this. Florida Dad says, autism dad here, so we get vaccine for all the time. The worship of every COVID vaccine really tanked the reputation of old school, no IP legacy vaccines that actually did what they're designed to do. Absolutely. I mean, that's the ultimate irony. I had never asked questions.
They kept trying to suggest that Kennedy's obsessed with taking vaccines on or off the market. It's utterly false. It's just a libel. Like all the Samoan measles nonsense. That was one big fat lie that was about them covering up for the fact that there was a bad measles vaccine they gave out. That's what they were trying to cover up. A lot of like the polio outbreaks over the last 50 years have come from polio vaccine. This is not realized by a lot of people because the media suppresses any story skeptical of vaccines since the mid-1980s. I mean, you go back late 70s and you can find CBS 60 Minutes talking about the disaster of the swine flu vaccine of 1976, where it helped sink in part Gerald Ford's presidential election that year. It was one of the key factors that hurt him. So it used to be something that was broadly, popularly discussed, and now it has to be completely suppressed, and everybody has to pretend that everything's safe and effective. But as to Kennedy, he's never called for banning things. He's called for informed consent. His consistent message has been people should have the right to choose, and if you're lying to them, then you should not market a product. Like his petition wasn't to take the COVID vaccine off the market. His petition was, you cannot label this product safe and effective for 6-month-olds when it's not, and you don't have the science to say that it is. And as Senator Paul reiterated, no healthy child, and that was a child that didn't have a bunch of other health problems, no healthy child died from COVID, according to Senator Paul. And that's because that's what the data supports, which means you absolutely didn't need to have a COVID vaccine for a 6-month-old or for a 6-year-old.
I was looking it up.
Kennedy's point was informed consent, that, hey, if you can make it available, just don't lie to parents about the safety or efficacy or what it is. It wasn't a vaccine. It didn't prevent infection or transmission, so it should never have been labeled a vaccine.
The latest stats now of that age group of young men, 1 in 2,000 for myocarditis. Pepe said we should give dollar for dollar retaliatory tariffs. Effing stupid. American economy is Mike Tyson at the peak of his career. Canada is a lightweight golden glove at best. They're idiots. They want to cause the crisis because it'll give them something to manage and it'll give them something to distract the population from. Guys, make your way over to Rumble. And by the way, apparently I'm getting a message that Rumble rants are not going through. I'll see what's going on with that.
Viva, I see a whole bunch right now.
Okay, excellent. Viva saves a great blue heron, then 400 ostriches. What shall he say?
Oh, that's my, I guess it's one of your relatives too. It's my, what the Native Americans call my totem bird is the great blue heron.
Robert, that is so freaky because every time we see a blue heron, it's my father-in-law's animal. We say, oh, there's Grandpa D. And the lawyer that I used to work with called me a bird because she said I behaved like a bird for good and for bad. It's bizarre world. Question for Barnes. Jack White has a few commie chats. Question for Barnes. What are your thoughts on academic agent's predictions he made on the Duran 10 days ago? Do you think he's giving the powers that be too much credit? Weasel out of the hearing.
I'm not sure about that one.
Okay. Let me, there was another one.
I usually follow the Duran, but I'm not remembering that off the top of my head.
Okay, and we got, I think it's Jack White up here as well.
They did predict, a lot of what Rubio would say and where Trump is heading and where Putin is heading in terms of spheres of influence. And then you see, I saw, Alex was talking about Alex and Alexander on the Duran, which you can find, duran.locals.com, also Rumble, YouTube, etc. But then I saw Rubio using the exact same language that they had been using days before to describe where they saw likely where Trump was heading and where Putin is heading. And Putin is doing the smart. There's a foreign leader that knows how to Pierre, what his name,
Poilievre.
Yeah, Pierre Poilievre. I mean, anybody named that, you can't take seriously. I'm sorry. But you look at those types, or look at Denmark and how they're handling Greenland. Contrast it to how Putin is handling everything. Like, even when Trump is out there taking all these shots at Russia, all Putin comes back with is, with the Ukraine war never would have happened if they wouldn't have stolen the election from President Trump in 2020. Right? So he knows how he's how to work with Trump, whereas a lot of these other foreign leaders, but some of them get it quickly. I mean, the Colombian president. I mean, did he reverse it? Like, what was it? 2 hours?
12 hours. But he gave AOC.
The Panama president, same thing. Panama president, he talks tough. We're not giving you nothing. And then Rubio comes down, says hello, and brought whatever message Trump sent. And he's like, now that we think about it, we don't think China should be running the Panama Canal after all. And then look at Venezuela. Even Venezuela, they released, I think those are guys that the Biden administration sent down to overthrow the government, by the way. That's why are Americans being held prisoner in Venezuela? I think it's the same people. But credit to Trump, I don't know what he did. He somehow gets them to release them all. So, I mean, everybody's like folding in like record time. We'll see what happens with Canada. I bet the president of Mexico folds pretty fast. We'll see. But so far, all these others are just, rolling over.
One after the other. We got from Jack White says, question for you and Barnes. Do you think if the courts keep using standing and latches to weasel out of hearing cases, it will start causing people to investigate the origins of those doctrines and start challenging their validity? I know Barnes doesn't like
at least
latches.
More blowback within the court of legal opinion, and maybe hopefully within some of the legislative branches and things like that. That would be the hope. Yes.
Okay. And then I think, Biltong, King of Biltong, doesn't seem to be able to get his chat through, but Biltong, want more protein for your diet? Add some healthy snacks, Biltong, B12, creatine, iron, zinc, BiltongUSA.com, code Viva for 10% off. And then we got Randy Edwards says, obtaining a secret clearance essentially requires an oath as part of the application process. You must sign a form. Snowden's job requires a high level security. Well, there's no question he broke the law. The only question is he a traitor or a hero? That was good because he did it.
Well, and the other thing I would say is there is a defense called justification. So if you believe what you're doing and you can show evidence that it more greater serves the public interest than strictly complying with the letter of the law, then you're allowed to, then the law actually allows you as a complete criminal defense to take that action. You think about it, there are all kinds of scenarios where we can imagine, like, let's say you need to violate traffic laws to save somebody's life, right? We would recognize, well, that's appropriate to do. That's not illegal to do. Even though it violates the letter of the law, it actually doesn't violate the law because the spirit of the law is defended by the justification principle. And in my view, Ed Snowden has a complete justification defense. Problem is American courts are not recognizing that defense in key whistleblower cases because they're corruptly handled out of the Northern District of Virginia by a select set of judges whose goal is to make sure the deep state is well served at all times, which at least the Eastern District of New York finally proved itself useful at finding certain aspects of these FISA laws unconstitutional this week.
All right, hold it, and we're going to save it for Rumble people. We're going to merge over there. Just an announcement, by the way, and I'm a little nervous about it because it's going to be an interesting interview. Roger Ver, and yeah, I'm interviewing him tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
Sweet.
So it's going to be interesting. And full disclosure, I have a Calci prediction that he will get pardoned within Trump's first 100 days. Because I've
clear, it's like the snow. You saw a lot of lies last week about the Olbrich case, a lot of lies this week about Snowden and the vaccine cases,
let me stop
January
there.
6 cases, and there's been plenty of lies about the Roger Ver case.
Well, the Olbrich, Ver, I understand now the political dynamic within the cryptosphere, but that doesn't mean someone gets locked away for 109 years.
He's for pure. He's an old school purist. It's why it's called Bitcoin Jesus in part. big believer in Bitcoin, but also in the original democratizing principle of Bitcoin. There's some people who are only in Bitcoin to line their pockets. That's under Bitcoin maximalists. And there's others that believe that's the best way to get Bitcoin's adaptability. So there's been different debates within the Bitcoin community, of which Roger Ver has taken his side consistently, whatever he believes will democratize Bitcoin and make it a way of financial freedom independent of centralized banks and centralized planners in the government. But as his motion to dismiss details, like I saw talk about, he just has to pay the tax. They won't tell him how much tax he owes. He asked
this
how
is
much
what
tax
I'm gonna.
they think he owes. They won't even tell him how much he owes.
I'm not fleshing this out as a defense to him. It's just like people don't understand. You hate the guy, fine. For whatever the reason, like hate Andrew Tate, but you don't bypass due process and you don't bypass civil remedy and try to lock someone up for the rest of their life.
Don't encourage the government to weaponize the criminal prosecutorial power to put in prison its political dissidents, its political critics, least of all to empower them to do that in tax law, because that they could do to every single one of us. They don't get to make new tax law through a criminal prosecution.
And everyone's like, well, he should have just defrauded the government. Reassess, go civil, and then see if he actually owes anything first.
Exactly.
So 10 o'clock tomorrow.
If he owes something, why won't the government tell him what? Tell him what it is they think he owes.
They're the details will be fleshed out, because I had to make sure, did the government really bypass any civil recourse? And the answer was yes. And he had inquired allegedly for years.
Oh yeah,
how
absolutely.
much do you
He
claim I owe?
The Freedom of Information Act, according to his motion, where they have the underlying documents to support it, that he filed it. He actually filed Freedom of Information Act requests to beg the government to tell him how much they think he owes, and they still wouldn't tell him how much he owes, and they want to put him in prison for 109 years. I mean, everything again. It's classic. What do you look for with lawfare? January 6 cases, Ross Ulbricht cases, these cases, the Douglas Mackey case that's still up on appeal, the meme maker case where they prosecuted a guy for making a meme, the Watchman case out of Michigan, the pro-life cases, like the January 6 cases, all have, and some of the vaccine cases, all have certain things in common. And what it is when you're looking for lawfare, look for they're pursuing a novel theory. They're pursuing it's a selective prosecution. In other words, that similarly situated people were not similarly prosecuted, and look for government malfeasance and misfeasance, various forms of misconduct in the process. They will have never complied with due process because they can't to prosecute someone for bogus reasons. Well, you have all three in January 6 cases, all three in the Snowden case, all three in the Assange case, all three in the Ross Ulbricht case, and all three in the Roger Ver case. It is a complete novel theory of prosecution. It is entirely selective. Nobody else has been prosecuted that's similarly situated to Ver. And there's massive government misconduct, including top high-ranking Justice Department officials lying under penalty of perjury, not only to the United States courts, but to courts overseas.
Yeah, the lies about Ulbricht were just amazing. The hitman that he hired a hitman when it was never even. It was
totally fake. They made up the story so they could get a judge and jury in their pockets without people looking twice at the absurd novel nature of that case.
Why do you avoid talking about Dr. David E. Martin? It makes no sense. He has all the evidence. It says LKD 505. This is over in our locals. I don't know who avoids talking about it.
Honestly, I don't know who that is, to be honest with you.
I'll screen grab that. Thinks Now says, sternly worded letters. Buffalo Betsy, did you see the stuff going on in Minnesota legislature? I didn't. Geegum Geegum has a great meme here just because.
He's made a meme out of my sister. That's my sister Martha's face he put on there.
I think you glitched out. I don't know if it was on my end for a second here. Hold on, let me just go back here. Canada's government should watch all YouTube videos of EVs bursting into flames in China. They need a preview of coming attractions. That's from the Engaged Few. Snookums, after COVID experience, I thought we weren't trusting the PCR test anymore. That was for the ostrich. Can you recommend a Canadian organization comparable to 1776 for us Canadians to support? I would say the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms.
The
JCCF, they're amazing.
That's really good work. Isn't your brother still up there?
Last one. My brother's still causing trouble. He's not with the JCCF. He's independent, causing trouble. I like Rebel News, but I know people have their issues with Rebel News. JCCF, people have their issues because the president, did something wrong in a trial where he was trying to find the judge breaking COVID laws. Grow up. All right, that's it. We're doing it now.
Could you think we could bring a copyright suit against Angela Merkel? Because she's stolen your name. She's stolen your name and put Freiheit on the front of her memoir.
She's destroyed it.
Yeah, think of the damage
go look at
her name.
All right, we are ending on CommieTube and Twitter. Come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com or Rumble for the rest of this. And the entire stream will be up. Audio as well on Podbean, pod format, whatever the hell you know. And clips. Okay, updating now. Rumble and Locals for the rest. See you later.